Wow, it's been quite a while since the last time I've done one of these. If you're new here, Indie Spotlights was essentially a quick top 5 list of little indie gems that I've been playing. These were mostly games that I feel weren't fit for a proper review, but they were good enough for me to want to talk about and, put a spotlight on them. I've put them on a bit of a hiatus for a while now because having to get games for a top 5 list eventually burned a giant hole in my wallet, which eventually became one of the reasons why I wanted to reformat these videos. Along with the fact that looking back at it now, I feel like the whole top 5 list thing made these videos kinda sloppy. In hindsight, I think it would have been better if a lot of the games I covered previously on the show had their own little mini reviews rather than being crammed into a quick top 5 list, so I'm gonna actually try doing that now. I just finished most of Corn Kidz 64, a game where you're playing an emo one-horned goat kid named Sieve. I believe that's how that's pronounced. And you're trapped in your goat sister's dream realm where you're on the hunt for nachos. The story by itself might not make this game seem all that interesting, but if you can't tell from the jagged polygonal graphics and the giant 64 in the title, this game is clearly a huge homage to the N64 era collectathons of the late 90s, and my god does it do absolutely everything in its power to remain true and authentic to that aesthetic. You've got a load of visual settings that try to emulate that old CRT look, you've got the imaginative level and character designs, and even the gameplay has this inexplicable pre-internet feel to it. I'm going to be honest, this game took me by complete surprise. It's not like I went into it with really low expectations, but I came out of it enjoying it way more than I originally thought I would. By the time I got about halfway through it, I was completely hooked, though it did take some time for me to properly get a feel for this game. On the surface, Corn Kidz 64 might seem like a cute N64 styled 3D platformer that mostly anyone can pick up and have a good time in, but this game's actually kind of challenging. Your movement here is pretty limited, you're not very fast, you're only able to perform a weak double jump unlike Super Mario 64's triple jump, and you can only wall jump twice before Steve starts losing his grip. But you have a bunch of versatile headbutt abilities that help you work around these shortcomings. The game often tests you on how well you can pull these off, as well as frequently expecting you to string all of your abilities together to get through some of its rigorous platforming challenges. It might be a lot to get used to at first, but it becomes very rewarding once you start getting the hang of it, especially with how this game likes to place its collectibles. Most of the time they're well within your line of sight, but they're just a little out of reach for some reason or another, whether it's because you need to explore more of the level to open up a path to it, or it's just out of your skill level. But once you figure it out, or you finally manage to nail it after multiple attempts, it just hits the good old dopamine receptors in the right spot. You've also got these crazy mirror challenges where you're transported into some abstract obstacle course, which sort of remind me a little bit of those weird ass levels in Super Mario Sunshine. These are like designed for you to fail them on your first few tries, but because of that, once you finally manage to complete one of them, it just feels so good getting a handful of those hard-earned XP cubes. I should mention that these are pretty much your primary focus for the entire game. You'll find them everywhere, you'll be rewarded at them for everything you do, and you'll need a certain amount of them to get into some locked areas, one of which is an extremely hard post-game level. There are other collectibles too, like in the first level you're given the option of going around beating up trash cans for this Muppet named Garbage Grump. I can't really wrap my head around what his motives are. He says he wants to make the world a more trashful place, but I don't think you'd really accomplish that by smashing up trash cans. Or maybe, I guess, I don't fucking know. Then there's the second level, which, my god, words can't even express how much I love it. It's so clever and creative with its design. It's this hillbilly pig town that's entirely built around palindromes. Things like the shopkeeper's name is the word trinket spelt backwards, and the church is called the Church of the Dog God. You know, shit like that. You quickly find out that this town is being controlled by a tyrannical owl who even transformed the former mayor into a sausage. But going even deeper than that, this entire level is completely flipped the other way. However, if you happen to find 5 of these disco balls, you can flip it back again, which is pretty important. See, there's this giant music box at the start of the level, and normally when you activate it, it plays the most ear-grating tune imaginable. But if you activate it when the level is flipped, it actually plays public domain music, which freaks the owl out, giving you the only opportunity to head into its tree and fight it. It's just great. This has the kind of whimsiness and creativity that I'd expect out of a game that takes so much from N64 platformers, and I would have loved to see more of this. It's a bit of a shame though that there's only 2 levels that follow this collectathon formula, while the last 2 are linear obstacle gauntlets, much like the ones in the Crazy Mirror challenges except bigger, and while they are fairly well designed, it's not really what I was craving towards the end. But you know, beggars can't be choosers, and for the most part I am pretty satisfied with what Corn Kidz 64 has to offer. And for a game that only has 4 levels, it still has a lot going for it. I mean, if you don't really have a knack for 100% completion, this will only be about a 5-hour romp, but if you're someone like me and you can't help yourself from exploring every single square inch of a level, this can take upwards of about 12 hours. If there were a few pieces of legitimate criticism I'd have to give to this game is that the camera controls are not the best. Normally I can kind of brush it off, though I would have liked having some sort of camera sensitivity option because it does feel a bit sluggish. However, when it comes to some of the small platforming challenges as well as those last 2 levels, it becomes pretty apparent just how inadequate it can sometimes be, oftentimes throwing itself in an awkward position which is far from ideal in those kinds of levels. The lack of iframes can also lead to some pretty cheap deaths, and while this isn't so much of a criticism, just something you absolutely should take note of before you buy is that a controller is a necessity in order to play this. I think you can use keyboard and mouse, though it's probably best if you don't. I haven't tried it myself, so I wouldn't know what it's like. I just went on the Steam page, saw that controller support notice, and read it like it was a Surgeon General's warning on a pack of cigarettes. But my closing thoughts are, if you're an avid fan of Banjo-Kazooie, Conkers Bad Fur Day, or hell, maybe even Donkey Kong 64, and if you're looking to scratch that 3D collectathon platformer itch, look no further than Corn Kidz 64. For that $7 price tag, this game is packing heaps of content that will leave you wanting more by the end of it. In a good way. It's short, sweet, challenging in all the right ways, and more importantly, it's solid as hell and really fucking fun. Corn Kidz 64 nails just about everything that made those older N64 games so special, while also going off and doing its own thing, making it feel like a gem that's been completely lost to time.